The best crypto trading strategy is one that cannot break from human error, human emotion, or anything of that sort. And today, I'll be covering for you guys an automated crypto trading strategy that is fully reliant on bots, that is basically foolproof. Now, how exactly this works, what you should expect as a yield, how to set it up for yourself, and the results I've gotten over the past couple of months, I'll showcase in this video. But let me put this forward. Every single thing that we're going to be talking about here today can be done manually, but it will be so much work and so heavy on the emotions that bots or these automated strategies just do it better. And that's why it often is called a passive income machine. Then again, you could do this all with your hands if you wanted to. It's just not worth the effort. So the platform we shall be using for this tutorial is Pionex. It's a crypto bot trading platform that's got some of the best functionality in the game. And right now, if you use the link down below to get yourself an account, because it's a good timing, but even if you're watching this video later, there will probably be another juicy bonus with the link down below. If you deposit $100, you actually get yourself $200 worth of a bonus, but it's actually stacking, meaning the more you deposit and trade with, the more of a bonus you're also able to get. And the top of the top tier is actually pretty ridiculous. Upwards of $40,000. Anyway, check it out, the first link down below, because this is only a very, very limited time. So what is the strategy all about? Let me explain it in theory. If we're talking about the crypto market and we're talking about top coins, because that's the only coins I'm doing this for really, we know that over time, they will most likely go up with some very crazy amounts, right? The only problem is, where exactly do we buy? And where exactly do we sell? The idea is to buy low and sell high, or really just to buy over time with some sells along the way to basically fund more buys and to have some sort of cash flow. Now, we can do this manually by looking for any price of, for example, BTC, looking at any single point in the future or in time that the price is slightly higher, sell it to cash in that profit to again at some point buy and then sell it again in the future. And we could do this multiple times throughout the day, perhaps if we're paying close attention, and this would lead us to a lot of profit. But here comes the kicker. What if you're trying to buy, but the price goes actually lower? So you're not able to almost instantly sell it for some profit. Now, are you going to wait till it gets above there, or are you going to average your price out? Buying, for example, at $100,000 a Bitcoin, and then at $80,000 a Bitcoin, now it averages your price out to $90,000 a Bitcoin, meaning if Bitcoin now bounces up from 80,000 back to 91,000, you again have got some profit where you now can sell, whereas previously you had to wait until $100,000 plus, right, with your initial buy. So that whole concept of buying your way down lower, we can automate that. And the nice thing is, we can also automate the process of selling as the prices go back up. As you can see, here's, for example, an XRP chart. And what have we done? What are all these lines? Well, every single one of these lines right here is a separate buy that our bot could do. And every single one of the red lines is, again, a buy in the future or on the short term, a sale that the bot would do, with this middle ground potentially being a little no man's land, where the position is doing nothing. And if you want to find this over on Pionex, there's two buttons for it. Either go to spot and then trading bot. This basically is just, if we have $1,000, we are using the $1,000 just as that. No leverage at all, just $1,000. With futures bot right here, we're taking advantage of every single move with a factor of perhaps 3, 5, 10, 20, depending of course on what you want. Most of the bots I run are either 3x or 5x leverage, but again, it depends on your own risk profile. And I must say, if we just go for a spot here, which is what a lot of people like to do, essentially, if you've got a good range, we'll talk about that later, the results can actually be pretty severe. But the reason I almost always go for leverage is because if you play the game right, it's pretty hard to get wrecked, again, if you don't get too greedy. But it also multiplies the yield by hopefully a 2 to maybe even 3 or 4 or 5-fold, depending, of course, on how the market reacts. And that's the thing. With spot, I'd say you're in a pretty good spot again, because you can never get wrecked, you can never get liquidated. On the opposite side, you're missing out on a lot of gains, and so that's a way off you need to make. Anyway, for this tutorial, I'll just be showcasing exactly what type of bots I always set up, what type of bots I think are best, and how exactly they work. So to set one of them up, all we have to go do is go to futures bot right here. It'll open up a section on the right We are going to go for futures grid and press create. However, you have got a couple of different options, right? This coin margin futures bot, all it basically does is instead of thinking of everything in dollar terms, it's thinking of everything in coin terms. So for example, if you were to open a $1,000 bot normally for Bitcoin, it's trading with $1,000, right? Similarly, you could also have opened the bot for 0.001 Bitcoin, for example, to act as, for example, almost a similar amount in dollars, but your profit and loss will then also be in BTC. So it has benefits and counters, right? Regardless, as we press this little futures bot create button right there, and we continue on, it's going to ask us, do we want to use a already set strategy? No, I don't want to. Do we want to long, short, or neutral? Now, longing basically means you, generally speaking, want the bot to buy as the price goes down lower and sell as the price goes down higher. Shorting is the opposite. You, generally speaking, want the bot to basically sell more as the price goes up and buy more as the price goes down, but it's different. Why? Well, because generally speaking here, you are net negative on the position. So you're basically saying, hey, I think the price is going to be going down. And that's, again, what a short is for, right? So you basically want to open more and more as the price goes up because you think the price is going down, meaning if the price goes down, you make a lot of money. And neutral, this basically goes both sides. When the robot is created, it will not buy or sell the futures, but only place orders. Oh, okay. I thought it would have a good explanation there about neutral, but it does not. Anyway, the idea here is the best of both worlds, but I've actually, throughout my years of using these trading bots, never once used neutral. I either have longs or shorts, and sometimes both at the same time. Right now, for example, a lot of people I know are opening up short bots because they're quite neutral / negative on the market. And the thing is, very often, even if you're not that bearish on the market, a short bot can still net you profit because, well, just like with a long bot, if it's buying on the way down, right, a long bot, at some point, there's going to be a relief rally and the bot can get to profit. Same thing for shorts. Very often, even if the market does go up for a bit, for a while, usually there's at least one more dump in the middle to make you profitable. However, for this strategy, we're just focusing on longs. And again, we can do any coin. Let's just go Bitcoin here just to prove our point. If we go for Bitcoin here, it's the BTC USDT perp. We could also do this on a Bitcoin versus ETH, Bitcoin versus SOL, or Bitcoin coin margin chart. This is, again, where we denominate everything in BTC. You'll see here, right? Investment amount is Bitcoin, not USDT. But we like to go here for BTC in dollar terms. We put a lower bound and an upper bound. Now, you can actually let this automatically generate some of this stuff for you, like the amount of grids. We don't want to do any of that. We're just going to logically look at the Bitcoin price and realize, hey, where do we think Bitcoin throughout the next, I'm going to show you in a broader screen, where do we think Bitcoin will go over the next couple of months? What's the lowest it could go to? If we want to be really, really conservative, we say the lowest Bitcoin can ever go is, let's say, $51,000. Or if we want to stay slightly below that, because we still want to buy at 50K if we get there, we put $49,000 as a basis. Where is the highest we think Bitcoin will go in the foreseeable future? Well, we personally think it can go to let's just say 151,000. This is a very, very wide range, meaning we won't actually trade as much. By that logic, the yield will also not be as high, but the counter to that is this will be able to last us a very, very long time without touching it even once. And the reason I'm showing it like this with a very wide range is because it is most simple. The more specific you get, you can, for example, open a range between 75,000 and 107,000. In this range, every single purchase the bot makes is significantly more per purchase. Why? Well, let's just say you are going to place 100 buys. If your range, for example, for Bitcoin, let's just say, I don't know why I felt so creative right now, but I decided to draw it. Let's say, for example, that our range will be between $10,000 and $20,000, right? For Bitcoin trading. Not too accurate, but you get it. Then every $100, it could place a buy or a sell if we had 100 different targets. Between 10,000 and 100,000, if we say, again, we want 100 buys and 100 sells within this period, 100 grids, as we call them later, it's going to only buy and sell every $900, meaning that this, obviously the top range, is most likely going to net us way more results as there's a lot more activity. And you may say, oh, but the bottom, since it trades every $900, that's way more profit, right? No, because let's just say it goes from 10,000 to 10,100. This bot will have made one sale or one purchase in that process. This bot is still waiting. If we go to 10,900, this has then by that point, let's say sold 9 times, whereas the other has also, one time for 900, but the other has sold 9 times for 100. meaning the profit in that case could be the same. However, if it only goes to 10,800, this will have sold 8 times, while the other will have sold 0 times, meaning this one is now up, $800 there, let's say. It's not perfectly logical that way, but it's to give you some idea why a tighter range will almost always net you more profits, but also could be slightly more trouble as you're going to have to actively manage it more. Why? Well, if we're looking at the range right here, right? We're looking at this range from, in this case here, 49 to 151,000. It's going to only fully be bought in for whatever amount of money we put in at 49,000. Whereas with the other scenario, if we do, for example, 80,000 to 120, in the 80,000 to 120 scenario, in this case here, it'll be fully in, basically fully bought. The bot will be full at $80,000. It doesn't have any more money left to buy if the price goes lower. And it will be fully sold, fully done if the price goes to 123,000. It will not have more coins to sell. The negative thing here is if the price goes down lower, again, it will not have more money to buy. So we have to add even more money to the bot. If the price goes higher, again, it will not have any more money to sell. We're going to have to reinvest or repurchase at a relatively very high average price. We could have netted way more profit by having a wider range at that point. But again, that depends. How much do you want to look at it? And how much profit or percentage yield do you need over that period of time? Now, for the amount of grids, this can heavily depend on your exact strategy. There could be a lot of numbers you're looking for. There's a recommended section, but in this case here, I recommend to just go for 500, the maximum, because unless you know what you're doing, the more grids, usually the better. And then for amount invested with leverage and auto reserve, what are these buttons? Well, let's just say we want to open this bot up. How much money do we want to put in it? Again, in this case here, it requires us to put a couple $1,000s in because we've also got a reserve. If we take that off here, it becomes a little bit less. The lower our range is, let's just say, for example, we do from 80,000 to 90,000. You'll see with only 100 grids. In this case here, you can see, actually the range I don't think matters that much, but the quantity of grids matters because now our actual investment is only 294 as a minimum instead of, let's see here again, right? Instead of 1,500. So the amount of grids here matter. In this case here, the price range doesn't actually matter. Now, realistically, I don't actually think Bitcoin's price will go as low anymore. Matter of fact, I think we are very close to the bottom. And if we do end up breaking down, I'm actually kind of comfortable with adding more to the bot to supplement it. So I personally think having a lower bound here of somewhere in the 60s is actually, for my personal strategy, slightly better. I think actually 70 could also work, but hey, we're trying to keep it kind of risk averse. So we're putting here, $64,000 as a basis, which is basically below the previous top of Bitcoin still, right? And in this case here for leverage, you got to understand, if we put $1,000 in before leverage, at maximum is going to be $3,000 committed, right? But that again, that $3,000 will be fully committed then at the lower bound. So at $64,000 of BTC. So that is again why at some point, higher leverage or you could do lower leverage with a higher amount of dollars. For example, if we put $1,000 in and we have to do a little bit more. Let's just say $5,000. It's going to be times 3, but it will only be times 3 at the bottom of the range. So the full $15,000 will be invested if Bitcoin goes to 64,000. If not, it'll just have only a part of the full allocation of 15,000 that it could use. It will only use part of it, right? Same thing for 5x. If we do 5x, it's now $25,000 that will only be used if Bitcoin actually goes to 64. And that's why sometimes it can be nice to put your range down lower, because now if you do 49,000 again, the full amount of 25,000 will only fully be used if you go to 49,000. Now, still, theoretically speaking, you could get liquidated along the way depending on how high the bot averagely bought. For example, if we have this range be in such a way where our average price right now is really, really high relative to the bottom of the price range, we may actually get liquidated along the way. You can see here, liquidation price is 64. However, you have to understand that the bot will be buying as the price goes down lower, which will most likely lower your liquidation price as well. And that's what this auto reserve function or the extra margin is for, in case you do feel as if your average price or your liquidation price is not that nice. Well, your average price you can change by just investing more if the market goes down on your own, which is a different button for that, or by adding some extra margin here. For example, if I add $10,000, you can see our liquidation now already goes from 64 to 29,000. And again, we can do this later as well. We don't have to do that at the moment. And that is again with 5 times leverage. We could also do 3x leverage, which again would put this number down way more. In this case here, it will never liquidate with $10,000 as extra margin. However, adding extra margin does mean you relatively get less yield on every dollar inserted into this bot, right? So the whole idea is to use as least or less margin as possible while still keeping a very safe margin. And if we're talking about how some of my bots got absolutely wrecked in the past, the only reason that's the case is if you go for too many all at once, too many to manage, too high a leverage, or you do it for very volatile altcoins. If your altcoin that you love and like goes to absolute zero and never recovers, your bot is going to be fully invested with no way of really exiting it, right? Point number two is if you had set up a bot with a liquidation price that's relatively actually quite high, most of the time it may not get hit, but if a mass black swan event happens, you may actually, in this case, get wrecked. That's why sometimes adding some margin is nice. And like I said before, there are some tricks for playing around with the amount of actual invest versus the leverage and playing around with the extra margin there versus just adding it as actual investment with lower leverage, etc. But you can play around with that as you like. Anyway, here's, for example, one bot that I've got running for about a month and a half. There's another bot here that I opened just yesterday. But XRP, for example, I put about $50,000 in at 5 times leverage. If XRP goes back to 50 cents, this will have $250,000 invested in this XRP bot. And over the past month or so, month and a half, it made me about $8,500 worth of profit, or about 17%. And you can see I put almost $200,000 in extra margin in here. Why? Well, kind of because I had the money in my account anyway, and I just did not want to open Pionex for a long while. That also makes it so that my actual yield, right now it shows it's 132% a year just from what it's able to cash out from buying and selling. And you can see the transactions right here. Buy, sell, buy, sell. Here's all the different orders it's placing right now. Buy, sell all the time, right? And here are my parameters for that exactly. So from that, just from buying and selling, about 132% a year. There's also another number, which is basically the P&L for the trend or the position you always have open that is not buying and selling. Sometimes if the bot is going well, this also can be a crazy amount of profit. This is just what is buying and selling. This is what your position, that in this case here is about, I'm going to say 65,000 XRP times 2.2. Let's just say $150,000 worth of a long open. Sometimes this also gets into a lot of profit, and you'll see it right there. So that is obviously how you end up with significantly more than just the grid. Officially, all the extra margin relative to my actual investment takes down from the percentage profit. But as long as it's still like above, I'm going to say 20% or so a year, it's almost better than anything else I could have gone for, right? And again, the idea was I usually have this in a earn spot, like right here in earn, but it's only generating, let's say, 7% or so. Here, sure, it's generating me less officially, because it's zero by being as extra margin, but I don't have to look at the bot, which is doing pretty amazing numbers. And the only thing I could do here, for example, is right now, let's just say, right, we can see that my break-even price is about $2.15 here, right? And if we go through, you can see more things that are perhaps quite interesting to you. For example, here, you can see that I opened the bot officially at $2.16. And if we go back to, okay, on the, I'm not so sure how you see it here, maybe funding history. If we go take a look, you can see that throughout this period here, I actually opened or invested more into the bot multiple times that week or that day. And you can see I put $10,000 in at $2.33 in XRP instead of the starting price of $2.16. That's why even though the price is basically at exactly where I opened it, I'm still down 15%. Now I could actually add more investment here. For example, I add a bit more, maybe let's say $5,000 or something like that at this price. And the main thing it's going to do, or I can just add the exact number here to make it 50K, a nice round number. What it's going to do is, theoretically speaking, lower my average price, which right now seems to be more along the lines of 229, something like that. Anyway, it's going to lower my average price then down a bit so that this trend P&L relatively, percentage-wise, is actually less. And if I add a lot in actual investment, it will basically make this percentage-wise be almost nothing, right? Because the investment would go up and the trend P&L wouldn't go down, but relatively then to the total size, it'd be less of a problem. And hopefully, if the price was significantly lower than my average price, which right now it is a little bit, you're actually helping your percentage out a ton because your actual average price goes down. So eventually you could actually narrow this down to almost zero if you got a bit lucky on the pricing. And again, I've got some longer running bots here as well. For example, a Solana bot here that you can see is actually also done about 64%. A BTC bot about 30% or so. For BTC, that's pretty huge. Ethereum bot, right? Put $1,500 in 200 days ago. It's up $1,000 plus $1,000 on the trend. So you can see pretty good results. BNB bot here, you can see how crazy that's been doing. And then as we go above, some of the bots have not been doing as well, but this one still, it's already cashed out roughly the entire bot itself. It's down because we opened this at $180 a SOL, and right now it's 136. But still, you can see we're in profit because it's just been running for so long, and that's the idea. A lot of people, they don't actually take the money out. They just leave it in so their bot can't get wrecked over time no more. Of course, that's all up to your personal strategies, but there's a lot of other buttons here as well. For example, you want to reinvest, there's a nice little button for it. You want to create a reverse bot. You can't see it perfectly, but you want to do the exact opposite in the short form. You can easily do it like that. You want to pause it for a bit. You don't want to trade no more. You can do that. You want to edit the price range after you already made the bot. You can. You want to take some money out of your investment. You can. You want to add some money to it. You can. You want to release only this grid profit. There's a button for it. You want to reinvest or compound the whole thing. There's a button for it, because we've also done some cool challenges when it comes to that. And the thing is, as long as you're not overdoing it, these bots will most likely be one of the best crypto trading strategies you'll find. Can you be underwater for a bit? Sure, definitely. Here, for example, we opened this bot for Bitcoin at $94,000. The average price, because the market went up a lot, might be significantly higher than that. And right now at 86, even though we already cashed out $16,500, we're down 25K on the bot. Because of course it's a $250,000 bot, and if we're down, let's say 10%, yeah, we should be down about 25,000. Here, it's 30,000 times 5, $150,000 bot, which again, in this case here, will be fully bought if ETH go to 1800. Or here for Bitcoin, it's actually mostly in, right? You can see here it's a 2.1 BTC long. So let's just call that 200,000. It's slightly less, but let's say $200,000 long, because again, the max you could go for it was about $250,000 worth of a long. And so it's not that crazy to be at a pretty good loss. But if Bitcoin starts going back up from here, again, it will relatively pretty easily get back into profit and sell a good chunk as, again, these orders continue on. But actually, it's only been since about a week that this was in a loss, because, of course, BTC went to below $89,000, as you can see right here. And that's, of course, the moment where we officially were in loss. But that's like $3,000 away. It's not that bad. And this one, again, similar for ETH. We cashed out $12,000, about 40% over the past, let's call it 4.5 months. We would have doubled the money over a year. But if ETH just went sideways, basically, even if it didn't go above our average price, we're down tremendously because the average price of this position is significantly higher. Because you can see we even added investment for ETH at 4,600 in ETH. Or right here, let's quickly see, 3,300, and the start was 2,955. But also, it's probably got a lot of buys open still that it's looking for a sale for at even higher prices for ETH. However, again, I personally think if we give this some time, it should all figure itself out. And, you know, on days like the 10th of the 10th, where the entire market saw massive liquidations, as long as your average price is not that, your liquidation price is not that close, like here, $800, you know, actually off of all these volatile moves, they often call it a volatility bot because it's going to be buying on the way down and also selling on the way up. You actually make a ton of money from these black swans and crazy events. The only problem is if your, let's call it edge, is too small, if your numbers are too close, if your liquidation is too perfect, you know, and something out of the ordinary happens, a 50-60% move in a day, you're going to get screwed. But that's, again, your calculations, and that's, again, in my opinion, the risk to these things. That the more yield you want, also the more risk you're looking for. There are strategies here that are extremely low risk. For example, a trading bot here on spot, the yield is not that crazy, but it's very, very hard to go wrong. Futures with 2x leverage and some, or 3x leverage and some money in margin, very, very hard to get wrecked on. If you're going to open for all the smaller altcoins, you want to take advantage of the volatility, you're bullish on them, you're going to use 10x leverage on some of them and 𝗕𝗓𝗓𝗓. Of course, it gets riskier and riskier and riskier. But what I've decided to do for my own mental health is mostly focus on the big pairs. BTC, ETH, Solana, XRP. Stack them till the freaking end. Just really, really make them as huge as possible. Not open as many new ones, not go for as many new strategies or small altcoins, and just stack a system that provably has worked. I'm extremely bullish on those coins, so I don't mind having big positions open for them either. As a matter of fact, I think even it's wise to get rid of spot, XRP, SOL, whatever, and just have it in bot form. Again, of course, with the risks associated, you understand them. But just because they generate slightly higher yield than just on its own. And this is just my thoughts, though. Anyway, like I said, if you want to sign up, the first link in the description down below. You can also get yourself some nice bonuses right now for signing up, as we've got the Black Friday promotion. Maybe if you're watching this at a later state, you will not have as good a promotion, but probably something else. And you can, again, find it with the link down below. You will always get the best sort of deal possible. And like I always say when it comes to investing, the best time to start is right now. Matter of fact, the best time to start would have been before, maybe yesterday, maybe a year ago, who knows? But the second best time is right now. I'm not your financial advisor. I'm just showcasing what I'm doing in the crypto market, my strategy, and my trading bots that have done really, really well throughout time. You may not look at the results and think it's that crazy, but trust me, my best friend here, who's been nagging me to showcase this more to y'all, actually did a $4,000 to $1 million challenge, and he got there in, I think, a year and a maybe 2 years and a half. I think from 2023 middle to 2025 start. I'm going to say about 2 years, let's say. I tried to do a challenge of a similar sort recently. How did we get wrecked? Well, because XRP went down 60% in a day, and I was not prepared for that. Did I learn a lot? And I think right now, almost every single strategy I do here is going to be pretty low on the risk scale, but a lot more effective than almost any other form of trading, because a lot of the other ones, they have manual errors, right? And what we can see now, from almost all the times I lost money in trading, it's because you either get emotional or there's some sort of manual error or some sort of crazy risk taken involved. If you skip all three of those, which are very easy to do with bots, it's really freaking good. That's why I said, check them out. Maybe even if you don't like it, at least give it a look, because it's one of the best things I've ever found out about. Link is in the description down below. And I'll be covering this almost every single day on the channel like I've been doing for a while. And if you don't believe in it still, you don't like it yet, just keep looking back every few weeks or so, because you'll see the results and they'll speak for themselves. But yeah, that's about it.